Hey, and welcome back to another Revit video. And in this video, we're going to look at modeling rails on stairs. It can be kind of convoluted, but hopefully this video will clear things up for you and give you an idea of what to do so they're not so intimidating or dumb or stupid or things like that. So before we get into it, if at any point in this video you happen to learn something, which I hope you do, please demolish that like button. It really helps me out a lot. Also consider subscribing too. I really appreciate it. Okay, getting into it now. If you looked at other videos that I've done on stairs, there's a ton. Type properties, instance properties, modeling them in general, multi-story stairs, which we have here, tons of different things. So we're going to get into specifically railings, but I will do my best to cover all of these different places that you might have to deal with rails and what to expect and what you will have to do. Okay, now, so I've got all of these rails, and the first thing I'm going to do actually is start by deleting them. And why is that? Well, a lot of times I prefer to model my stairs based on not having rails present, but obviously taking them into account. So there's some certain calculations that go into giving you the required minimum egress width, and that is sometimes dependent on handrails and whatnot and their location, which we will get into in a future video because we want to look at all the codes and how to actually model the correct stair given this situation. But besides that, what about rails? Well, like I said, I want to model a lot of my stairs without rails because it's so hard to read. It's so hard to understand. So if we just look at these floor plans, this is so much easier to understand because I can see it. Now, one other thing I would do is go into visibility graphics, stairs, and I would remove the riser lines because the nosing lines are what we're going to see from above. And again, this makes it so much easier. And I would probably do the exact same thing. And this is what I like to do a lot of times with my stairs. I might even hide some of the above marks. So if we hide those marks, or even if we leave these on, I do want to at least hide the above riser lines. So these are all nosy lines that we're working with. And obviously the supports, stringers on the side, of course. But besides that, this is very easy to read. You know, it makes so much sense. Okay, so how would we model rails? Well, there's a couple of ways. You can model them whenever you model the stair. So for example, if I come into level 1 and we want to simply model a new stair, we can go stair, going from level 1 to 2, come out here, and I'm just doing this willy-nilly, but you can see the result whenever I finish this stair is I get rails. Cool. But let's undo that because we have more options here. Before I even accept the stair, I have railing up here at the right. And I usually forget about this because I don't care because I'm going to come back and delete them anyways. But we have the choice of choosing a specific type of railing. So typically speaking, you will probably want to run your calculations knowing because it's a stair, you're going to have to deal with handrails, but you might even have to deal with guardrails. So guardrails with handrails is probably one thing you want to do. So here's guardrails. Guardrails rectangular, and then where do they go? Again, the code is very strict, and some of these width calculations are dependent on where the guardrail sits. And typically, you're going to have those guardrails on just a basic egress stair sitting on the stringers. Otherwise, you're going to have a wider stair if you have those for some reason sitting on the treads. I don't know why you'd want to do that, but whatever. So typically, I'll put them on the stringer. So this is specifying the type of railing and where they're going. And so I'll press OK. Nothing happens, obviously, until I accept it. And you can see I get my guardrails that have a handrail included right there on top of the stringers, which is totally what I want as far as maximizing maximizing the efficiency of the width that I'm working with. Okay. Also, if I were to come back into level 1, yeah, we can see this is a giant mess. It's really hard to read. Again, why I probably want to delete them until I want to actually put them up. Something else, and this is partly pet peeve, partly constructability thing, partly cleanliness in presentation and function. But you'll notice here, if I come to 3D, and if you have a lot of people who have worked in Revit, you can see this is a big pet peeve of ours. And that is because we have these continuous handrails, continuous guardrails, which that's required, of course. But how they're integrated and how they end up being modeled by default is just a mess. And that's because we don't have enough area, enough room beyond the actual stair run for these to work themselves out. And I say that because they've worked themselves out because they have these dramatic 90-degree drops and turns. Now, if we wanted this to look cleaner, what's the best way to do that? Well, I can go back into level 1, and this is the way I model most of my stairs, assuming I have room. The only thing I need to do is offset at the landing by 1 tread length on one side. So I can simply take that as alignment and then right there. And so what have I done? I've simply moved up my second stair run 1 tread length. Why would I do that? Well, let's go ahead here back to 3D and we can see what happens to our guardrail. Now, suddenly, yes, it is broken and it's a mess because Revit does not know how to model these things correctly. But point being is that we have a smoother transition, and it's likely that if I change this to a different guardrail, that we have a truly more smooth looking transition. And that's what you would expect and hope to see in the real world too, instead of these dramatic drops that make everything look kind of ridiculous. And now, all that to say, what we had previously is perfectly functional and it's fine. You can do it. But as far as being continuous and uh, being presentable and making the most sense, you probably want to go with something more like this if you have the room. And like I said, you may not have the room because it might be that you have to have all of these aligned beautifully. Because if we get to the point where, it turns out I have a certain width beyond the landing that I need to hit, you can see that I'm going to have one, depending on the length and how high you're going and everything, 1 tread length is going to be farther offset. And if you have the room to do that on the landing here, great. If not, don't worry about it. But that's just something to be aware of when it comes to railings in Revit. Okay, so looking at this again in 3D, we can see that, yeah, I have modeled my railings and this is what it came in as. Cool. Once again, I'm going to delete these. I don't like them, but this is what I do. So I basically get to the point, and we'll get to the actual stair here in a second, adding rails to these specific stairs. But when it comes to this one, what I like to do a lot of times is after I have the stair located correctly and the width correct, then I come back and put the railings on. So we can do it right here. We can come into our level 1, we go to railing, and then I can place them myself just wherever I want. In this case, I want them on the stringer, and so I'll place them on the stringer here and then all the way up. And so this is just an example. I can even hit preview. We can come back to 3D and we can see what will happen. Well, nothing's happening right now, and that's because we need to pick the host of the stair. Once we do that, again, no preview, let's accept this, and we can see that, hey, look, they're on the stringer-ish. Okay, so basically, what did we just do? Well, I can simply, and this is what I would do if I, for some reason, wanted to model the railing in the middle of the stair. And in some cases, you need to do that if it's so wide. So I put this here. We can see, okay, this will work. Go back to 3D and I can see, hey, look, that's what I want. I mean, to a degree it is, but that's not what I want when I'm just placing them on the stairs for egress purposes. So how would I do that? Well, the quickest way is actually not the sketch. You don't want to have to draw all this out. My gosh, I'd lose my mind. You can click the drop down here and it says specifically place on stair or ramp. This is fantastic. And again, this is the exact type of thing that we just saw when we were drawing the stair. I can choose my placement, which is treads or stringers, and I want them on the stringers. But then over here, I can choose that specific type of rail. And then I just simply click the entire stair and it places it beautifully. Okay, wonderful. So you'll notice this is the exact same result as if I were to, I'm going to delete this again. If I were to come in here, edit stairs, and then choose my railing. But you'll also notice this, because I had a railing and deleted it, or because I edited the stair multiple times, I don't even have that option anymore to select my railing, which is too bad. So just know that you'll have to come back and place them on the stairs this way, which I'm totally fine doing because it's 2 clicks and it's done. Very easy to do. And so likewise, we could do the exact same thing here. Place on stair, click on all of these, and boom, that's done. And then click on this one, boom, that would be done as well. Now, we will look at multi-story stairs here in a second, but whenever I click on this, they will all be done, which is fantastic. So I'm going to actually undo this because you're going to see this in just a second. But when it comes to this one, while it's easy to just place the rail and all of this, it makes total sense to do that. You'll notice that I have a continuous guardrail with a handrail on both sides of the stair all the way up. And You can do this. You can totally do this if you want, but economically speaking, functionality speaking, presentation wise, is all of this required? Absolutely not. It is complete overkill. And so what do I mean by that? Well, if we were to model, I'm gonna actually get rid of this stair now. If we were to place these railings on this stair, like there, then where are these guardrails actually required? Well, they're not required as guardrails on any exterior portion of the stair because I have walls right there, like within a half an inch of the stringer. So it's right there. I don't need guardrails. There's no 30-inch fall. There's nothing like that. So I don't need guardrails at all. So the first thing that I would tend to do is change this entire railing from a guardrail with a handrail and all this to just a simple handrail with a pipe. That's it. Well, not even the pipe, just the handrail for stairs. And this is just as easy as removing some of the guards below. And, we'll get into specific rail modeling later on, but you can see it's just the handrail. That's all we need. So what's another thing that you probably notice? Well, there's two things. We don't have extensions at the top and bottom, but we do by default at the top based on how this is modeled. And we'll show you here in a second where that is. But besides that, we don't need handrails on landings. Like that's also overkill. You can do it. It's not that much more expensive, but you just don't need to. So what's the way around this? Well, that is to basically cut up the railing at certain points, basically to where you have the top and bottom extensions for all the railing conditions. And then after that, you don't need additional handrails like on the middle of the landings, things like that. So with so many landings here, it doesn't make sense to do that. So how would we do this? Well, the first thing I like to do is copy, Control-C, just copy it. And that is for later. But the cool thing is that we're actually able to use the split with rails. And I believe this came out in Revit 2020, I think. And so we can literally just split it, which is totally great. We don't have to copy it like we used to, but I'll show you why you might want to do that later. So copy this here. We're gonna have to come back and actually edit this location, but I can get rid of this. We don't need this. You can see we've got the nice offset on the top here. So what do we need to do? Well, we just simply edit this path. And so because I have this offset baked in, I only need this to be a foot. And I wouldn't do it that way because we need this dimension to actually be a foot itself. Typically it's not actually a foot, but we're gonna go ahead and do this. Not exactly a foot, I mean. You'll notice that because the extension is here, I can literally just remove this and it's going to take into account, you can see the preview. It is exactly what I'm looking for. So likewise, I could do the exact same thing with an additional length down here, which would be my tread length, at least 11 inches, or feeling better about it, let's just do a foot. And you can see this is what I am after. That looks good. So pressing OK, boom. I like this a lot. This is really good. And so doing the same thing here, get rid of that, put a simple foot in here, and then, I obviously don't need this. So we'll cut that out in just a second. Cool. And then slice it there because I don't need that again. And one more time, edit this one all the way back to this point. Okay, great. And then same with this one. Do the exact same thing here. Get rid of this and this. That looks good with my stair extension at the bottom, of course. Cool. So look at that. Like this is starting to look good. We have the continuous guardrail that we obviously need in the middle with the handrail. And then we have handrails only where we need them on every other run. Obviously you can't see them here. You can see right there, but this looks good. So let's look at this in plan. It's kind of hard to see because of all my above lines. So again, let's get rid of all my stair above lines so we can see things a bit more. All these above. Cool. And then same with the railing actually. So railing, all these above lines, they go away. So cool. So now we can see, look, the handrail is working. We have our dimension like we want it. It's very easy to get this where we need it to be. We're happy with that. Okay. So that wasn't too bad. When it comes to these multi-story stairs, that's something else. So let's go ahead and place the railing there once again. Boom, placing that on the stringers is what we want. And so you'll notice here, they're not continuous. The guardrails are not continuous. And I would not bother modeling this to making this continuous because it becomes a nightmare, is to actually create a detail component. And this detail component would actually span between these two stair runs to actually show the continuous railing. So I wouldn't bother with that. That's just kind of a little bit overkill. But if we were going to do the same thing for these, it's as simple as this. We can delete these, or we can change these to the handrail with stairs, and then we can edit this. Now, you will see that once the rails are added, then they don't act the same. So I can't, whenever I change this, it doesn't change the stair above. So let's just be aware of that. But one thing I can do is just delete all of these from the second stair, and when I'm ultimately done, I'm not going to edit these specifically. When I'm done with this one, I can just simply copy this up to the next level, level 3, and then boom, it works just like that. And so a lot of cases I've done that. Well, something else I've done before is you can have two railings on the same at the same place. So let's say, for example, we have this continuous stair run that includes a guardrail and a handrail. Well, I'm going to copy this. So I'll change this one to just a guardrail with no handrail. And we see, yeah, there's no handrail. And so I'm actually going to paste on top of this. And so we have two rails. And you can see, well, I have a lot going on here. I'm going to change this second one to just this handrail. And so that will give us, and we could do actually the stair rail, that will give us not only the handrail, but the guardrail as two completely separate things. We can work with them independently. Now, obviously, this one is meant for a wall, but regardless, assuming that's just a basic handrail, we can manipulate those differently. And so why would we do that? Well, we would do something like this because we don't need the guardrail to extend, but we do need the handrail to extend. So when I edit this path, we can simply add our extension here at the bottom, and we can get exactly what we need. So we don't necessarily need, I know it's a stair rail, of course, but we don't necessarily need the guardrail to continue. And so what if I want to take this step further? Well, I don't like doing this because this is something that we don't really typically deal with. So I would probably model just this far, because in plan, this looks perfectly fine. Like it's exactly what we need in plan. Looking at this in level 1, we can see everything that we need is included. We got our extension and everything. So with that, I wouldn't necessarily go that far. But in section, you'll see this. I would probably fudge this because it's harder to do when it comes to actually getting this modeled correctly. But you'll notice if I tab to the rail, we can actually unpin this, but I don't want to unpin this. I just want to edit the rail. And so again, this is not something I want to do all the time, but I can edit the path here, and this is going to allow me to draw on top of this. And maybe I want to bring this down, 10 inches or whatever, and then we can have it come back. So is this something that I want to do every time I have a rail? No, but it's also an instance, and you'll notice it actually does unpins this by default because it's not associated to anything, and it's now completely custom. So yes, you'll need your handrails to return back to the guard or come down to the bottom, things like that. But I wouldn't bother modeling this because it's not going to work out this easy every time, nor is it necessary. You'll see this in section, and that's kind of it. So don't worry about that necessarily. So coming up to the top, I want to actually go ahead and place these one more time. Place on stair, my guardrail. There we go. Because we looked at the outside already, I'm going to get rid of this, but we want to basically close this up somehow. And so we have of course, a guardrail that we need to worry about and carry through, but also the handrail. So let's actually go to our level 5 plan, edit the path here, and we can see that, yeah, let's go ahead and continue this. I need to draw this a couple of inches out just so I can pick up another baluster, move that way, and then here we can go all the way to the end here, and then finally connect over to the wall. So basically, we're closing off this area here. And looking back at 3D, we can see, yeah, this is pretty close. It's landing pretty close to the edge here, but that's something you can edit later. So obviously, we have a giant issue there that we need to deal with, and that just means we need a little bit more space when it comes to this actual area here. So I would give that a little more space, give this a little bit more space. And you can see, yeah, there's some minimums that you need to meet because it has to actually turn the corner. Obviously, this is going to be done much better looking in the field, but yeah, that is totally what we want. So what's the problem here? Well, obviously, we're extending too far, but beyond that, the problem is we don't need a handrail all the way up there. We only need our handrail to continue around one tread length, and that's easy to do. Like we did before, we can tab to this handrail, and we can edit the rail. And so I can choose where I want this to be removed or whatnot, but I can't really remove as much as I can add, and I don't need to add anything. So what would we do here? Well, I would simply unpin this like we have and actually delete it. So we have just the rail. Obviously I could have changed this to the rail type, but it doesn't matter. I'll actually go ahead and copy this, and then we will paste in the same place and then change this rail. We'll change it to our basic handrail. So this is where the offset from path comes into play. Please be aware of this because this is very important. This will impact lots of things, code and whatnot. But just know that this is going to have to be, it's usually 1.5 inches between the guardrail and the handrail. And whether or not you're doing what we're doing, whether it's replacing a guardrail with a handrail, this offset might need to be adjusted a bit. So in this case, I'll go ahead and give that the 1.5 inches it needs, and there we go. So then I can just simply edit the path, come down here, and I can delete these because we don't need them. And then I just need to make sure that I have an extension that is equal to about, a foot or more of a foot back here. And so all I need to do at this point is simply drag this back to the point where, yeah, we have plenty of distance, and that looks good. That's fine. But then, yeah, look at this. So then you can continue that handrail up there if needed. Obviously, you can have it just extend and curve back down if you want to. There's a lot that you can do here. But this allows the handrail to continue while the guardrail actually serves as a full guardrail, covering all the other distances. Great stuff. So this is kind of an overview of modeling and showing, working with handrails on stairs, because it's very important. It is primarily for documentation, so I would be hesitant to say go as far as even that we have in this video, because you don't necessarily need to. I've seen a lot of people, they don't even model the rails at all. They just cover those with annotations and basic detail components that they've made, because they're hard to deal with, and it's hard to make them look right. It's easier to make detailed components look right. So I've gone as far as just adding the continuous rail. I haven't gone as far as creating the whole rails as detailed components. That's up to you if you want. Because I feel okay with modeling them, at least to this level, I think you should too, and I would recommend doing that. So that will do it for this video. We looked at all the different railings and how to model them and whatnot. We didn't look at railings specifically, but how you'd want to model them on stairs, because that's really important, just at a basic level. So if you happen to learn something, please demolish that like button. It really helps me out a lot. Also subscribe too. It does really help. I will see you in the next video. Have a wonderful day, and thank you very much for watching.